to our distinguished panel of judges from around the world, from the leaders of the United States Chamber of Commerce and the Presidential Precinct and the College of William and Mary and the University of Virginia and all the great presidential houses that are a part of this precinct, I say to you, good evening. It's my great joy to talk to you once again. And I say that the others here who are not among the judges don't know that I slipped out today and went over where they were at the National Center for State Courts and came into their meeting and listened to what they were doing. And at some point I said to myself, you know, when you make a speech, either you can stand there and say the things that come to your mind, or you might ask them what they want to hear and tell them the things that come to their minds. And so I decided to ask them at that moment, what do they want to know from me? Now, the context of that is this. I am 74 years old as I stand here right now. Tim Sullivan knows this completely because he was there. 42 years ago, when I was 32 years old, I was in the governor of Virginia's office late at night at a table with our great friend Tim Sullivan, and I became the first black and at 32 years old, the youngest Supreme Court justice in the history of Virginia. What that means in the context of this meeting of international judges is that I have been a judge more than half my life. For 42 years, I have been a judge, and this is why the judges were asking me this question and that question, and I'm going to get to their questions. I told them we're going to do it all in a few minutes. But because we have a broad topic here, and because you come from many legal traditions, and because you're about to go back home, and because we want to make a difference in your lives, I'm going to start with something that became important to me in my 42 years as a judge, and I want all the judges to always remember justice and law are not the same things. Law tends to set the limits and the boundaries. In almost every legal system I know in the world, they say that the judges should not make law, that is the duty of the legislature, that all we are supposed to do is apply the law. And so in my life, it was well to remember that justice and law are not the same. But that doesn't mean that we don't have an important job to do, because the job of the judge comes in at that moment when the law has to be applied to a real case that is part of somebody's life. Now, if you remember, some of you may know from studying history and studying American history that in the Declaration of Independence, which was penned at the time of the American Revolution, there is a statement at the end of the Declaration, at the point where the signing is done, where each person says, we pledge our lives, our fortune. They say we mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. What they were trying to do was pledge all that they had. And they described lives, fortune, and sacred honor basically to be everything. I'm putting it all on the line, and what I have thought over the years is that when citizens come in front of us as judges, they bring to us their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. Basically, when citizens come in front of us, they lay before us all that they have. And they are asking us to do justice in their cause. Basically, they're asking us to listen to them, to understand the plea that they bring, to feel the anguish that they feel, or the sorrow that they feel, or the hurt that they feel, or the pain that they feel, which takes me immediately to what we were talking about in the session today. Remember, we were talking about artificial intelligence? I think that artificial intelligence is powerful. I know that it will change our lives, but no computer will ever have the lived experience of a human being who has to suffer and struggle through life to make change and to bring them from a place that might be down here to a place that's at a mountaintop. No computer will ever live it the way we do, which means no computer will ever sit on the bench and look across at someone in front of them and feel compassion or empathy or sympathy or understanding for the human condition. A computer will never be able to do that, which makes me think that there will always be a role for judges. I don't know where all these new events and powerful computers are going, but I think there will be a place throughout time for a human to think about and understand and judge other humans. Now, because you come from many different places that I know not of, there are things that I think that happen in my life that I want to urge you to do. One of the early things that I learned was to speak up. I decided that if I'm in this room with the other justices, we were 7 on my court, if I'm in this room, I better speak up. I'm not here to be silent. If I'm in this room, I am meant to be in this room. And I want every judge in this room to have that feeling. If I'm on this bench, I'm meant to be on this bench. If I'm in this room, if I'm at this table, if I'm in this discussion, I am meant to be a part of this discussion. And let me tell you the difference that makes sometimes. In my life, I came up on the rough side of the mountain, as people describe. And I lived in a world of violence from my father, who is long dead by now. And I knew what it was for my mother to get a restraining order from a father who was drunk and angry and wanted to break through a door to cause harm. And I can remember sitting with the justices of the Supreme Court of Virginia talking about a domestic violence case and wondering why the judge extended the injunction against a person. And to them, it was just a technical discussion of a statute that said the judge shall issue a mandatory injunction of separation and severance of no more than 15 days, and thereafter he can only extend it one time. And they were like, well, he's extended it one time, and so forth and so on, and I don't see what the problem is in this case. And I'm sitting there saying, do you guys not know what it's like when somebody is on the other side of the door, and if they can get through, they will kill your whole family? Do you not understand? And they were like, oh, because they had no sense of it. And so what I learned in that discussion, and that some of you may learn when you go back to your court, others who sit with you have no idea of all the experiences that you have been through, which means that if you don't speak up, you will lose part of the discussion, the richness of the discussion, and you might not get to the best result. Now, one of the early examples of doing what I'm talking about is when we were in school. I don't know, in my school system as a baby, they taught us about stereoscopic vision. And what they said, some of you will remember from your early training, that each of our eyes sees a different scene. That the right eye sees one thing and the left eye sees another, but when you put both those visions together, you get depth perception. And I have always in my life moved that to other situations. And so I figure if you can see deeply with two eyes seeing two different things, how much more deeply can we see a problem in our nations and in our courts if we put different sets of eyes on the same problem and then respect the discussion that comes from talking to people who look at the same thing with a different perspective. Do you see what I'm talking about? Now, somebody asked me today in that meeting about integrity. And one of the things about integrity for judges, we are claiming that we're not going to be taking bribes and being pushed around and told what to do. But one integrity issue for me was being sure that I gave a fair assessment of the people who were in front of me. And so here's a thing that I did when I was on the Supreme Court of Virginia. if I had in front of me a racially charged case, a white man killed a black person or a black person killed a white person, here's the thing that I would do. I would switch the roles. I would think about the case and I would say, it seems to me that this ought to be the answer and that this is the way the law should be applied. And then I would say to myself, if I turn this around, would I feel the same way? If I made the assailant this color and the victim that color, would it make a difference? And if I did that in my mind and I felt that there was a difference, I would check myself and say, you're not being fair. You're being biased. Now, this is not anything I forced on the other judges. It's something I did myself. And as it turns out, years later, I started seeing programs about what they call implicit bias. I don't know whether you know that in the country where you come from in your systems of law, but we talk in U.S. about implicit bias, that there are things that affect us that we just are, that are in us and that we are not conscious of. But then as a judge, I tried to be conscious by making myself make that switch. And so I ask you to do that when you go back to the places that you come from. The other point I want to make is this. You're here in the United States, and we seem to be a well-functioning nation, and our court system seems to be well established, but I want you to remember that our court system is still evolving. Our court system is still changing. Your court system will change, but it takes effort to make it change, and things don't happen overnight. You may know, some of you, that Dr. Martin Luther King, a great civil rights fighter here in the United States, said in one of his important speeches that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It's a beautiful sentiment, but that statement, as lovely as it is not complete, because he does not tell you what makes it bend. It doesn't bend on its own. It bends because people of goodwill or good thought, or people of understanding, lean into the arc and push it. Now, in the justice system in our state, judges are normally not allowed to participate in the public process, in the lawmaking process, but there's one exception. And I don't know what it's like in your nation, but it's a worthy exception. It says, except with regard to the administration of justice. Judges in America are allowed to participate in the political system in order to make the courts better, in order to make the justice system better. And so I hope that where you come from, that is a possibility. And if it's not, that might be something that you need to push for, to make those kinds of changes and yet still be a judge, still be impartial in the cases that are in front of you, but yet you are the one who knows what it's like to sit and judge. You are the one who understands. Now, in that discussion today, I was asked, what is the color of justice? It was one of the inquisitors to me. He says, I want to ask you a poetic question. I stopped, as y'all remember, because the name of my memoir is The Poetic Justice. And so it was a stunning question for one of the judges to ask me a poetic question, but he said, what is the color of justice? I think that the color of justice ought to be the color of humanity. And humanity is not one color. Humanity is richness in range of color. Is humanity not? Humanity is beautiful in its range of what we're looking at right here today. The color of justice is a fair world where everybody, no matter what their skin color is, has a chance to be heard, has a chance to be treated fairly, has a chance to get ahead, has a chance to live in an equal world where they are not squashed down for how they look. That's the color of justice to me. Where is that poet who was in the room who asked me about the color of justice? That's what I think about the color of justice. They asked me today, is there anything that I regret in my time in life and in my time on the bench? And the answer is no. And the reason I can tell you that is not because I'm perfect, but because anytime I had a case, I did the best that I could in that case. Anytime I had a case, I read every page. I looked at every footnote. I read every case because I tried to hear what they were saying to me. And so I tell you, in your life as a judge, if you go on the bench prepared by having read everything that the litigants have put in front of you, you will know that you've done all you could. And when you do all you can, you don't have regrets. When you do the best you can, when you judge it fairly, you don't have regrets. And I don't want y'all to have regrets. I want you to do this work, and when it's all said and done, it'll be like the person in the impossible dream, that you can lay down in peace because you did the best that you could. I want you to leave a mark on the world where you are. I want you to make a difference in your nations and thus make a difference in the world. I want you to be like what the poet said. I want you to be the person who leaves footprints in the sands of time. Now, the poet Longfellow is the one who wrote a poem called The Psalm of Life. And that's what I want you to carry with you as you leave here this evening. And he said, "Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art to dust returneth, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us further than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God o'erhead. Lives of great ones all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn or shipwrecked brother, seeing, she'll take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing. Learn to labor and to wait. The whole world depends on us as judges to get it right.